Meridan McGraw. She's got an MPH. She's the director of the University of Cincinnati Center for Integrative Health and Wellness Workplace Mindfulness Team. Meridan is a mental well-being and resiliency coach and mindfulness facilitator and the director, like I mentioned, at the University of Cincinnati for Integrative Health and Wellness. She combines her master's level education in public and mental health with her training in mind-body modalities to teach individuals and groups techniques for optimal well-being. So much needed today. Meridan has worked with a variety of populations such as professional athletic teams, including, like I mentioned, the Bengals and the Browns, lawyers from numerous firms and organizations such as the Cincinnati Bar Association, C-suite executives and associates from companies such as PNC Bank, P&G, and Coldwell Banker, nonprofits including the Cincinnati Museum Center, healthcare professionals across all of us, that's all of us here, the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, veterans, mental health professionals, families, and adolescents. Meridan's mission is to make these techniques simple and applicable for life in the 21st century, so she can help her clients be their best selves, personally and professionally, thus enhancing overall organizational performance and societal well-being. And I welcome you to take a look more at her profile at our Grand Rounds page. We are recording this, and so if friends have missed this, or if you'd like to share this recording with friends, I will share our website at the end. So welcome, Meridan. Spring is here. Reset is here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie. What an introduction. I'm just going to have you come with me everywhere and introduce me whatever I do. Say nice things about me to my husband. So I am very, very glad to be here with you today. As Stephanie said, as some of you are hopping on, I want this to be your session, your hour. So please use the chat to interrupt me, to interact with me, to ask questions. There is no right or wrong question, no question too small. And again, I really want to hear from you. So on that note, I'd love for everyone or whoever's willing to share in the chat, what mindfulness experience do you have to date? So do you have a daily practice? You've heard of it, you've never tried it before, somewhere in between that, never heard of it, just came on because you know there's stress in the world and stress in your life. So use the chat now to let me know, what's your mindfulness experience? Who's going to be the first brave person? Thank you. I've been practicing informal mindfulness lately. Yes, we learned about it in one of my courses. Fantastic. We'll talk more about informal mindfulness today. Great way to practice throughout your day instead of adding this as one thing on your to-do list. Anyone else? Daily practice, never heard of it. I use it rarely as needed for acute stress, some mindfulness here and there, trying to practice breathing, using senses, inconsistent use, something I want to do more regularly. I hear that a lot, Jenny. Daily practice, yes, yoga. I consider rock climbing to be a form of mindfulness. Kat, I completely agree. We'll talk more about that as well. Very aware of mindfulness, have a great experience, but inconsistent. Beautiful. So across the board, all levels of experience, which is my favorite type of group to work with. Connor, hi, Connor, one of our students, research in mindfulness and practice daily. Connor, I love having you in class, and Connor does research for us in the center. Teach and practice yoga and meditation. Fantastic. Great. So why are we here? Why do we need mindfulness? We're stressed. Stress has been called the health epidemic of the 21st century. Now, this quote was before COVID, but COVID has only exacerbated COVID, the war, what's happening globally, so many different things, inflation, finances have exacerbated the high levels of stress that we are already experiencing 2 or 3 years ago. So stress is a huge issue in our country. And there's usually a little slide here. I don't know where it went, but we ask people how many visits, how many primary care visits, what percentage of primary care visits do you think are due to the underlying cause of stress? And it's anywhere between 75 and 90%. So that's, I have a migraine, I keep getting migraines, underlying cause is stress. So stress impacts us as individuals, on a physical and mental health level, and it also impacts us as organizations, businesses, how we show up in the world. And a lot of us are walking around like this. This little guy says, what the hell is that? And then that little guy over there with all that color and all those scribbles behind him says, oh, it's just my mind, right? And if I could see you, I'd ask, raise your hands. How many of you feel like this? And typically when I do that in a virtual meeting where I can see people, everyone raises their hand. So we feel like this a lot of the time, sometimes even all of the time. So to combat this, Harvard Health came out, this is a quote from 2014, and said, we've got to meet people where they're at. We've got to help them with skills that help them cope with the stress in their life. And one of these skills is mindfulness and meditation. And that's what we'll talk about today. So before we talk about mindfulness and how it can help, we'll talk a little bit about the fight or flight response. And many of you, as you see faculty, maybe some clinicians on the line, have a good understanding of this. So I'll just do a really brief overview in relationship to mindfulness. But we have this amazing system in the body, fight or flight. A lion's chasing us. Our body says, oh crap, a lion's chasing us. We've got to fight that lion. We've got to run for that lion. And then some people freeze, obviously. So this system was developed thousands of years ago to help us survive. It's an evolutionary mechanism in our body. Again, beautiful, beautiful system, helps us when there really is a lion chasing us. But what's happening in our society is that a few different things. One, there's a lot of stressors coming at us all at once, bombarding us. We're constantly connected because we all have one of these things. And we're not communicating to our body and our brains, hey, it's not a lion chasing us. It's just a snarky email from a coworker, or it's just a last minute deadline. I don't need the fight or flight response in this moment. And when we're under prolonged stress, which again, the majority of Americans and globally, we've been under a lot of increased stress the last 2 or 3 years. And when we're under this chronic stress and we're not addressing it, we're not doing things to cope with that stress, we actually see structural changes in the brain. So our hippocampus, the gray matter around our hippocampus, which is in charge of memory, decreases. So this is, oh my gosh, where did I put my keys? What did I walk into this room for, right? We've all done that. That's the hippocampus. Prolonged stress, unmanaged stress, hippocampus shrinks. Prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning, our ration, our reason, that part of the brain shrinks as well. Amygdala, fight or flight response, that part of the brain, the gray matter, increases with prolonged unmanaged stress. What we want to do. So in a perfect world, a stressor would occur, our fight or flight system would fire, that sympathetic nervous system would get us ready to address that stressor. We would do one of two things. We address it and we return back to baseline over time. Or we say, okay, this is a stressor and I can calm myself down using mind-body skills and bring my nervous system back to baseline. But how many of us have just one stressor occurring at a time? None of us. It's stressor after stressor after stressor. And sometimes this is before 9 a.m. in the morning, right? And when we don't manage this, when we don't return our bodies back down to baseline, we see a severe loss of resiliency. So what we want to do is calm the nervous system back down so we can be ready for that next stressor when it comes at us, and we can maintain health mentally and physically in the body. So what helps us return back to baseline? Oh, excuse me, I forgot. We added some burnout slides. Ignore me. When we consistently do not return to baseline, this buildup of chronic stress can lead to burnout. So burnout is a job-related condition, and it's a response to chronic stressors that wear on us over time. Those micro stressors, those small stressors that happen again and again and again and again and again, right? And how we see this manifest is we see 3 different subsets of burnout. We see emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and low sense of personal accomplishment. So emotional exhaustion would be, I'm so unmotivated. I just have no motivation to go to work. I can't do it. I don't want to get this job. So I just don't really care. Depersonalization would be, well, that's not my job. That's Stephanie's job. I'm not dealing with that, right? I'm depersonalizing myself from this experience in this role. And then low sense of personal accomplishment would be, I'm bad at this. I'm always bad at my job. I always screw up, right? So we see these 3 subsets of burnout. And again, this happens with prolonged stress that we're not managing. And managing means calming down that sympathetic nervous system. It means calming down that part of our nervous system, triggering that parasympathetic response, which is in charge of rest and digestion, and returning our bodies back down to baseline between stressors or as those stressors continue to happen. So when we talk about the drivers of burnout, we usually share this slide to help you think about what leads to this. What are those micro stressors that happen day in and day out? And these are some of the drivers of burnout. So meaning, do you feel purpose when you go to work? What are the job demands? Is there too much on your plate? Do you have flexibility? Do you have control, autonomy over your days? Is there work-life integration? And I actually like to use the term work-life separation. Do you have any period of your day where you're mentally and physically not at work? And notice I said mentally and physically. So a lot of times we're physically not at work, but we're mentally still there, right? Can we separate any portion of our day to really just be outside of the workplace? Do you have support at work, resources? So all of these things, when we think about drivers of burnout, can lead to that state of burnout. And how we address burnout is multifaceted. What we'll talk about today, again, is this individual level intervention. And we like to share this slide to note, because people say, great, I'm practicing mindfulness and I feel better at work, but we've still got all these things coming at us. And there's still these organizational flaws that I can't fix, right? And of course, when we think about a multifaceted approach to burnout, we do need to think about team and organizational level interventions, and also how we operate as a nation and our corporate workplace mentality that we have globally, right, across the nation. Today, we're going to talk about what you can control and the individual factors that you can shift to help mitigate burnout, prevent burnout, and cope with those ongoing stressors in the workplace. How do we do this? Mindfulness is one mind-body technique that can down-regulate the nervous system, return us back down to baseline. And I think the coolest part is consistent mindfulness practice actually changes those parts of our brain that are associated with stress. So it's not just I feel better. It's not just, oh yeah, my heart rate's a little slower. We actually see structural changes in the brain from consistent practice. What is mindfulness? What is mindfulness? And if you have any questions so far, please feel free to use the chat, any thoughts, feedback. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is, and before I tell you the definition, and obviously you can read the slide, but this little guy down here is Jon Kabat-Zinn. And so he is considered the father of mindfulness in the West. He brought over a lot of these techniques in the 70s from Eastern cultures and introduced them to patients with chronic psoriasis and chronic levels of pain that weren't being treated by the interventions they were receiving. So he said, I've been training with these Buddhist monks. What if I brought these techniques to our patients and introduced them without the religious connotation, just the techniques themselves? And the patients started to get better. They started to report, hey, my pain is getting better. I'm feeling better. And so Jon said, well, if this is helping people with chronic pain, what if we expanded it to the general population for humans that deal with normal daily suffering and stress? And so we created a course called MBSR. I'll type it into the chat. MBSR, it's called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. It's what I'm certified in. And it's an 8-week course, 2.5 hours a week you meet, and you're asked to practice for 30 or 45 minutes a day. So how many of us can commit to that? Not a lot of people can commit to that or are willing to commit to that up front. So now we've taken that course, that 8-week course, and we've adapted it into a number of different interventions that we use through the center based off Jon's 8-week MBSR course. And when you read about the research associated with mindfulness, it's usually research done on his 8-week course. So this is his definition. It's the awareness that arises through paying attention in a particular way on purpose in this present moment, non-judgmentally. So I also like to break it down into intention, attention, attitude. I'm setting the intention to pay attention to whatever is in front of me, even if I don't like it, with a non-judgmental attitude. Intention, attention, attitude. So I'm setting the intention to pay attention to what's in front of me with that non-judgmental attitude. I also think about it as the opposite of autopilot. So a lot of us walk around habitually doing things that we don't even think about. A lot of us are on autopilot in our brains. We have these subconscious thought tracks that are going all day long that we're not aware of. So mindfulness shifts us off that autopilot and brings our awareness back into the present. The other beneficial thing about being in the present moment is that most of the time, gratefully so, the majority of us in this present moment are safe. Right? We're not in an imaginary future in a what if situation that causes anxiety. And we're not ruminating on a past that may have been difficult, but is already gone. We're in this present moment. And that's how mindfulness can really help us and help decrease some of those symptoms of anxiety and depression. So what happens when we practice mindfulness consistently? We see a host of improvements in a variety of different things. So we see increased immune functioning, better sleep, which is a huge one for people. memory increases, processing speed, our focus and performance increase, emotion regulation. So when we think about the amygdala, that's that knee-jerk reaction. When we flick someone off in traffic, we scream at someone. That control increases over those moments of high intense emotion. Relationship satisfaction, we're more flexible in our brain, so innovation increases. We see decreases in pain, stress, and actual cortisol levels. So not just self-reported stress, but cortisol levels go down as well. Symptoms of anxiety and depression, rumination, and again, that reactivity piece. So a lot of different benefits from when we practice mindfulness consistently. Inevitably, people usually say, Meridan, what's consistent practice, right? How do I get these benefits? How long do I have to practice? All of these studies were done with people that practice at least 10 minutes a day for 8 weeks, 10 minutes a day for 8 weeks. So not a huge ask. That being said, you will see benefit even just from 60 seconds. So if you say, I can't commit 10 minutes right now, you'll still see benefit just from 60 seconds. On an organizational level, we see a lot of benefits when teams practice. So creative thinking increases, leadership, decreased healthcare costs is a big one. So Aetna did a study with 13,000 of their employees. They trained them in an 8-week mindfulness course. They measured healthcare costs over the course of 2 years, and they saw an average saving of $2,000 a year in healthcare costs just from this 8-week mindfulness program. And then recent research that came out in 2017, and it's emerging, we are seeing reduced implicit age and race bias. So people are more aware of that internal habitual thought track, and they're able to not act on those thoughts. So we're seeing some pretty cool research being done in this space. And then final thing on the benefits, if you're like, I've actually got my stress under control, I'm pretty good at managing that. Mindfulness is also a way to train the brain for optimal functioning. So why did the NFL teams hire me? It wasn't to make their players feel better. So I hate to say it. It was to make their players perform better on the field. It was to increase peak performance. So mindfulness can also help us be a better whatever we are. Mother, father, friend, spouse, clinician, researcher, whatever role we're doing, mindfulness can enhance that role and increase peak performance. So I hope I've shared enough with you about why the heck we're here, why we're going to practice this, what mindfulness is, and now we're going to practice it. So any questions before we hop into this first practice? Okay. So find a nice comfortable position. And if you're new to this, please keep an open mind. We'll find what we call, go ahead, Stephanie. Yeah.
It looks like Laurel has a question, so let me try to unmute her real quick. Laurel, let's see
the Q&A.
here. Let me get to you, Laurel. Go ahead, Laurel. Did you still have your question, Laurel, or did you want to wait? Okay. We'll come back to you. Oh, wait.
Oh, does it matter what time of day? Fantastic question, Laurel. So it doesn't. I usually recommend that people find a consistent time. So when we talk about forming a new habit, if you do it at the same time of day, it's easier for the brain to grasp and latch on to that new habit. That being said, if you like to set your day off on the right step, I suggest practicing in the morning. If you have trouble with sleep and you're trying to use these practices more for relaxation, I suggest practicing at night. Repeating the question, it was, does it matter what time of day these techniques are practiced? So again, no, it doesn't matter. I encourage consistency. If consistency is not possible, do it when and where you can. And then again, if you want more of that, I'm starting my day off on the right step, try the morning practice, more relaxation, winding down your day, practice at night, or you could do both if you're a high achiever, I guess. And many people who meditate do both evening and morning. And then my last thing on that would be find what's right for you. So all of these techniques will work for you if you find what is right for you. So if Laurel says, I actually really like practicing at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, great, practice at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So doesn't matter when you practice, find what's right for you, different benefits from different time of day. Any other questions before we hop into a practice? Okay, so find a nice, comfortable, meditative position. What does this mean? It means uncross your legs and take the soles of your feet to the ground beneath you. And then if it feels comfortable for you in this moment, you can close the eyes. And if that's not comfortable for you, just take a soft gaze downward. So maybe you look at your knees, your hands, your feet, and just start to settle into stillness. Maybe this is the first time you've found stillness all day. And maybe you notice the parts of the body that connect with support beneath you. So perhaps you bring attention to the bottom of the feet. Maybe you raise all 10 toes and lower all 10 toes. Maybe you raise the heels and lower the heels, pressing all four corners of the feet into the ground beneath you. And imagining the ground pressing back, supporting you in this moment. Maybe you bring attention to the top of the head. Perhaps you notice, am I clenching my jaw? Can I roll my shoulders down away from my ears just a bit? Can I sit a little taller, a little straighter, not stiff? Perhaps you imagine the weight of the head melting into the shoulders, shoulders into hips, hips into knees, into ankles, out through the bottom of the feet. The entire body grounded here in this space, this present moment. And as your body settles into this present moment, into stillness, perhaps you notice the mind is still elsewhere. Maybe it's thinking about that to-do list waiting on your desk after this call. Maybe it's thinking about a conversation you had this morning, or maybe it's jumping around to all the sounds in the space around you. Wherever it is, just notice that without judgment. And then bring the mind into this present moment by focusing on the breath. So noticing with curiosity how the breath feels in this moment. What parts of the body move when I inhale? And what parts of the body move when I exhale? Perhaps you repeat to yourself, inhale, I breathe in. Exhale, I have arrived. Or inhale, I breathe in peace and calm. Exhale, I release tension. Or maybe you count the breath. I inhale for a count of 2, and I exhale for a count of 4. And then for the next 60 seconds or so of silence, choose one of those things to focus on. So either the sensations of the breath, words that you repeat to yourself, counting the breath, or if the breath isn't right for you to focus on today, pick something, the bottom of the feet, the right knee, a sound happening around you consistently, one thing to anchor your attention in this present moment. And whatever you've chosen to focus on that now, and notice when the mind wanders, which if you're human, it will. And then gently and kindly come back to that one thing you're focusing on. Again and again and again. And then notice with curiosity, what was that like? No right, no wrong, no good, no bad. And then before we close this practice, think of just one small thing that you're grateful for today about yourself. about yourself. One small thing. And then repeat to yourself a few times, I am grateful. Noticing what that feels like in the body with curiosity. And then take a few final deep inhales through the nose and a few final deep long exhales out through the mouth, bringing energy back into the body, wiggling the fingers, the toes, taking as much time as you need to gently blink the eyes open, coming back to this moment. And then as you do so, I'll invite you to use the chat to share what that experience was like for you. What'd you notice? What'd you like? What you dislike? There's no right or wrong answer here. So what was that experience like for you? Calming, difficult, relaxing? Thanks, Stephanie. Calming. What else? Incredibly relaxing. I noticed how tense my jaw was. Beautiful, Jenny. Good awareness. Peaceful, quiet, relaxing. What else? Anyone find it difficult? Anyone's mind especially busy today? Calming, refreshing. Sometimes I feel restless when I try to do mindfulness. Yes. Jason, physically, like you want to move, restlessness, or mentally? Curious. That was calming and refreshing, both. Beautiful. I'll come back to that, Jason. Calming, bringing me back to the present moment. Yes, I want to run around. Yeah, I get that, Jason. Yeah. Jason, have you ever tried walking meditation? It was difficult at first, but I eventually felt more connected to myself. Beautiful reflection, Mary. No, okay, Jason, 1 sec. I'm going to come back to that. Excuse me. Beautiful. Okay. So I can hear all the different sounds around me. Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. It's amazing when we bring our attention into the present moment, what we notice that we didn't notice before. I find it hard to really clear my mind during the day. I can do it in the mornings and evenings, but hard during the midst of the day when I know I have a lot of things to do. Beautiful. So first of all, the goal here is not to clear the mind. So many people tell me I can't practice mindfulness meditation because I can't get my brain to stop thinking. Your brain will never stop thinking. The mind will never stop wandering. And as Caroline said, sometimes at various points in the day, the mind is calmer. Sometimes it's busier, but it will never stop wandering. That's the way our brain is wired. And it's the way our brain protects us, and it's how we think. So it's not a bad thing. What we do with mindfulness meditation is we notice the mind has wandered and we bring it back. We bring it back, we bring it back, we bring it back. So focus is a choice. Refocusing is a skill. So we choose to focus on one thing, and then we notice the mind has wandered and we bring it back. And it's that refocusing, that skill that we're building here. So what we just did was focused mindfulness meditation. There's also open awareness. I'm not going to go into that today because it's a little bit more advanced, but focused mindfulness meditation is the very foundational first step practice of mindfulness. What do? We sit in stillness or movement, which I'm going to come back to, Jason, in 1 second. But in seated meditation, we sit in stillness. We find stillness. We focus on one thing. It can be anything. Most commonly, we choose the breath. Why? It's always with us. It's consistent in the present moment, regardless of where we are, we hope, right? We choose the breath, focus on that, or a sound that's happening consistently, a body part, a word that we repeat. We focus on that one thing. We notice the mind has wandered and we bring it back again and again and again. The longer you practice, the quicker you'll notice the mind has wandered. Oh, I'm thinking again. Okay, let me bring it back to that one thing I'm focusing on with curiosity. Jason says, sometimes I notice how tight my shoulders are and feel like I want to move to get rid of that. Yes. So Jason, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, oh, that's tense. Let me use an exhale to release and relax. I also think mindful movement might be interesting for you to try, Jason. And if anyone's resonating with what he's saying, I would suggest it as well. So we don't have to sit to practice mindfulness meditation. We could do a walking meditation. And to do that, go outside and a walk. Don't listen to a podcast. Don't listen to music. Don't call someone on your phone. Just go for a walk and notice what you're experiencing. So what do I see around me? Can I use all 5 senses to bring me into this present moment? And doing that is a mindfulness practice. You may also try a different type of mindful walking where you lay out a yoga mat and you walk back and forth on that yoga mat. And you just think about, what does my body feel like? Each step, notice the mind has wandered and come back. So that type of movement practice is another way to practice mindfulness. Difficulty. So that's the other thing I wanted to address. Mary said it was difficult at first. And some of the people said, yeah, my mind was busy today. Sometimes I feel restless. So this is difficult. So our brains are not used to focusing on one thing. We multitask all the time. We're certainly not used to sitting in silence. That's not something all of us do a lot of the time, right? In our society, we're used to doing, producing, doing, and then crashing at night. And so this is a different way of training the mind. So give yourself grace. And this is so difficult. In fact, there's a study that I love to share. It was done at Brown, 100 men, 100 women. They put them in a room by themselves, no phones, no technology, 15 minutes of silence. So you can choose to sit by yourself, Jason, 15 minutes of silence, no phone, or you can choose to shock yourself, physically inflict harm upon yourself, not knowing how painful that shock was going to be. 25% of women and 67% of men chose to shock themselves rather than sit by themselves in silence for 15 minutes. Why do I share this? 2 reasons. One, give yourself grace. This is difficult. Start small. Start with 60 seconds, maybe 3 minutes. Don't go for 20 minutes a day, right? You'll hate it. You'll quit. Start small. Give yourself grace. It is difficult and it's important. It's really, really critically important. If we can't sit with ourselves for 15 minutes, how can we show up for anyone else in our life? So it's difficult and it's important. Any other questions on this practice? I think we should try the walking before the shocking. Yeah, Jason, I like that idea. I agree. Cassie says, sometimes when I exercise, my mind does wander, but I find that helpful because I will find myself processing some event and have an aha moment of some sort. Is that different than mindfulness? Yes. And Cassie, it's all about the intentionality. So I also have a lot of creatives that come to me with this question. They say, well, I have to brainstorm. I have to be creative. I have to let my mind wander in a million directions because that's when my ideas come to me. And it's, again, all about intentionality. So Cassie, if you're intentionally saying, I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to use this run time as my brainstorm time, I'm going to use this time to let my mind go in a million directions and let those synapses from the day connect and these ideas come to me. Great. If you're doing it, which the majority of Americans do, just on habitual autopilot, where your mind is going in a million directions and you're not consciously aware of that, that's not what we want, right? So mindfulness is intentionally saying, yes, I'm in this present moment and I'm going to intentionally carve out this time for brainstorming. Or I'm going to use this time to really just focus on this one thing, right? So it's all about the intentionality behind it. Cassie said, gotcha, that makes perfect sense. I think I need to be intentional in making time for both. Yes, I would encourage both. There is huge benefit to also moving or sitting and doing nothing, like just letting your brain go in a million directions. There's huge benefit. A lot of people tell me my best ideas come to me in the shower. Why? Because we're letting our brain loose, right? And there's huge benefit to taking a mindful shower. So instead of letting your brain, because what happens when we let our brain loose, what happens sometimes? It starts to ruminate. It starts to catastrophize, worst case scenario, right? And if we're not aware of that and we can't say, oh, that's worst case scenario thinking, I'm going to redirect my attention back to the present, that's where we get in some mental and physical trouble. So we can also take a mindful shower. When we notice our mind is just wandering, going crazy, can we notice the water? Can we notice what the soap smells like? Can we notice what the temperature of the water feels like on our skin? That's a mindful shower, and we're doing it with intentionality. So any other questions on this practice, thoughts, feedback? Please use the chat if you do. I'm going to pull up some more slides. Excuse me. So this can be difficult, what you talked about. How do these techniques impact our brain? So I'm a little bit more interested today in sharing with you some practical ways to implement this into your day. So I'm going to scan through this rather quickly in the interest of time. That being said, if you have questions on the neuroplasticity, Greater Good Science Center, I'll type this in. First of all, you can contact me, but Greater Good Science Center, their research page is fantastic. And they have a lot of different research articles out there on this very topic. So you can go there and check more out. But that being said, we know up to 8 parts of the brain can be affected by mindfulness practice. The parts of the brain that I'll talk to you about today are the ones I already mentioned, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. We know that when we practice mindfulness consistently, that computer, the executive functioning part of our brain, that gray matter thickens, amygdala, that shrinks, and they talk to each other. So what does that mean? It means when my husband says something that annoys me, instead of immediately saying a bad word to him or snapping at him, right? Which I would never do. Instead, that's my amygdala. So he says something snarky to me. My amygdala says, oh, that's a threat. We've got to react and fight back. I pause. My amygdala talks to my prefrontal cortex and says, this is not a lion. Let's take a deep breath and communicate in a different way. Right? So this is what happens when we practice mindfulness consistently. That amygdala still fires, but we're able to communicate with the prefrontal cortex that says, not a threat, not a lion. We don't need fight or flight. Let's calm the nervous system down. Laurel said, my Fitbit just posted this. If you feel stressed this week, give Fitbit Relax a try. 67% of people who use this deep breathing session experience a decrease in heart rate. Beautiful. Love this. And I didn't share this actually in that mindfulness practice that we did when I told you to count, inhale 2, exhale 4. That's a really simple thing you can do throughout your day. No one has to know you're doing it. You can do it moving, Jason. And when we elongate the exhale to the inhale, that automatically triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you ever feel like, wow, I'm just really revved up, I really feel stressed, I really feel tense, just making the exhale twice as long as the inhale can start to release some of that tension and calm the nervous system down. So deep breathing is really effective for calming the nervous system as well. So again, in summation, very, very brief intro to the neuroscience behind this. Mindfulness helps us recruit that higher order functioning to the prefrontal cortex and downregulate that reptile part of the brain, the amygdala. So in sum, allows us to be responsive, not reactive, which is the part of our brain we want to operate out of the majority of the time, right? If there is a threat, life or death, we want to be reactive, right? Most of the time we want to be responsive. And that's what mindfulness helps us do in the brain. Formal versus informal practice. So someone at the very beginning of the session said, I've been practicing mindfulness informally. What the heck does that mean for newcomers? It means that they're practicing throughout their day. We can make any activity that we do our mindfulness practice. If you brush your teeth every day, make that your mindfulness practice. How? Instead of zoning out, thinking about what you're going to wear, what's on your to-do list for the day, really notice brushing your teeth. What does the toothpaste taste like? What do you see on your mirror? Notice your feet on the ground. What does the body feel like? Take a few deep breaths. Notice brushing each tooth. Use all 5 senses that make sense in that moment to bring your full present moment attention to what you're doing. That is a mindfulness practice. Notice your mind has wandered, come back. Mindful eating is another beautiful informal mindfulness practice. Eat slowly. Notice what you're tasting. Notice what you see on your plate. All of these informal practices can be weaved throughout your day. I don't know why that did that. Let me go back. And then formal practice is intentionally setting aside time to really focus on a seated meditation, a walking meditation, a body scan. There are a variety of different practices that we can do as a formal practice. You can practice informally throughout your days, and you don't ever have to practice formally. What I will say though, is it's like anything. If you practice formally, it's going to be easier to practice informally throughout your days. And it's going to be easier to access these techniques and these mindsets in times of high stress when you practice formally. Any questions on formal versus informal practice? Please use the chat if you have questions as I move on. So how to start a formal practice. And this goes back to what time of day that Laurel asked. Pick a time when you won't be interrupted. A lot of my clients practice now that people are going back into work in person. They pull into the parking garage, they park their car, and they practice 5 minutes in the parking garage. If that's when you can practice, do it. So pick a time when you won't be interrupted. Can you give more information about mindful eating? Yes, Terry, perfect question. So mindful eating, what I recommend is Judson Brewer has a mindful eating app that I love, and he's done a lot of research in this space. He's actually an addiction psychiatrist, and he specifically focuses on using mindfulness with addictive behavior. And he has, again, a mindful eating app where he studied mindful eating in comparison to Weight Watchers, and people who practiced mindful eating actually lost more weight than those that were on Weight Watchers. And it's because they actually listened to their hunger cues. So when we practice mindful eating, first of all, we slow down, we put our screens away. So we're just eating. We're not watching TV. We're not on our phones. We're not doing email. We may step away from our desk if we're at work, and we actually look at our food. So what am I eating? And before that, even, we would ask our body, what do I need? We check in with those physical sensations. What do I need in this moment? And then we prepare that to the best of our ability. And then we look at our food. What are the colors on my plate? Where did this come from? What does it taste like? What does it sound like when I chew, right? So we're bringing full present moment awareness to the activity of eating. We notice when we start to rush, notice what that feels like in the body. Notice when those sensations of fullness start to emerge. And it's really interesting because when we practice it, and I encourage you to try this with something like blueberries or raspberries or raisins, something where it's really easy to grab a handful and just throw it into your mouth. If you practice mindful eating with those things and you choose just one, really look at the blueberry. What do I notice? Let me really chew this one blueberry. It's amazing how much less you eat and how much more satisfying the food is because you're really enjoying it. And you know, oh, I'm full, I'm not full, right? You're listening to those cues. Terry, did that answer your question? Anything else specific on that? I'll keep going, please. Great, perfect. So again, back to a formal practice, pick that time, sit or lie in a comfortable position, be consistent. So I always stress this to people, you know, if you do physical activity for your heart, for your body, if you go to the gym and do weightlifting, let's say 2 or 3 times a week, if you did that for a month and you said, okay, yeah, I'm good now. I've got my biceps, I'm done. That the progress that you made is going to go away, right? You got to keep going to the gym. It's the same thing with these practices, right? These are consistent preventative practices. They need to be done daily or every day, even if just for 60 seconds, right? So even if you just practice, a lot of my clients use their email as their practice. So every time they send an email, they take 3 deep breaths. So even if you're just doing that consistently through your day, it will start to shift the neural pathways in your brain associated with stress. So be consistent, start small. If you were training for a marathon, you would not go out and run 23 miles the first day if you weren't already a runner. You probably wouldn't even do it if you were a runner, right? Start with just 1 to 3 minutes a day. Same thing here. We start small, we work this muscle, we work this way the brain works, and then we increase over time. Mindfulness in everything. So this is our informal practices that we talked about. So we can do mindfulness everywhere, walking, brushing your teeth. Sean or Dr. Cotton and I at the center always joke that we should get a kickback from dentists in Cincinnati because so many of our people that we work with say, wow, I really slowed down and really paid attention to brushing my teeth, you know, as my mindfulness practice. And I even had one client say, I realized that I hated the taste of my toothpaste. I never even noticed it. And then I started practicing mindfulness and I realized this thing, right? How many things do we do on habitual autopilot that we don't notice each day, that we don't notice? Exercising again, and I someone in the beginning of the session said rock climbing is my mindfulness practice. Yes, beautiful. I love that. If you are totally zoned in, focusing on your body moving as you climb a wall or a mountain or whatever it is, that's a beautiful mindfulness practice. I don't know why these slides are moving on their own. Cleaning the house. So washing the dishes is often my mindfulness practice at night. I just actually wash the dishes. I turn off my podcast. I notice what the water feels like. I bring attention to what I'm doing. Showering is a good one, mindful eating, and you can do this with anything. I have a client right now, she's really musical and she listens to this one violin piece as her meditation. She focuses completely on the music. Her mind wanders and she brings it back to the music. She notices how she feels mentally, physically, emotionally in that moment. And then finally, this is a little bit duplicative of the slide before, but these are some different ways that you can start to practice throughout your day. So build in mindfulness breaks. So even if it's just for a minute, put it on your calendar. The Apple Watch, Laurel said her Fitbit, the Apple Watch will also remind you to breathe. I don't think it's very accurate because sometimes I'll be in the backyard having a nice glass of wine, playing with my 1-year-old, and it's nice out. And it's like, you should breathe. And I'm like, I actually feel really good right now. Right. So I don't think it's actually accurate, but it can never hurt to breathe. And it will remind you if you set it to do so. Leading a mindful minute can be really, really helpful before meetings. If you think about it, we're all rushing from place. We're coming from different experiences, conversations that may have been difficult. Taking a moment to just pause, take some deep breaths, wiping the slate clean, bringing your attention into the present moment can be really impactful for individuals and teams. I had a Post-it note on my desk for about 3 years that said, "Are you clenching your jaw?" Because if you can bring mindful awareness to that throughout the day, if you're clenching your jaw, you're clenching your shoulders, you're clenching your neck. If you can just release that, even with just one inhale, one exhale, that changes the whole way your body's experiencing stress in the present moment. Listening mindfully is a practice that we do in our 8-week course. And it's where we actually listen to people. So instead of listening to respond, we listen to hear. And we also notice what that person is saying, how it makes us feel in our bodies. Ooh, Stephanie just said something that really made me feel kind of anxious, right? What does that feel like physically, mentally, emotionally? Can I stay present with that instead of just saying, Stephanie, you're wrong. That's wrong, right? Can we really listen? It's a beautiful, beautiful practice. I encourage you to try. Email me if you want a script for it. Go for a walk mindfully, do mundane tasks with awareness. Anything can be your mindfulness practice. And if you do nothing else, just start single tasking. Obviously, I know in our society, multitasking is a must sometimes. And there are also opportunities where we could single task and we choose not to. Every time you're single tasking, you're training your brain to focus on one thing and you're practicing mindfulness. Single task with curiosity and non-judgment, that's your mindfulness practice. Here's some resources that we like. Calm, Headspace. If you like an Aussie accent, Headspace is great. Insight Timer, some books that we like. Wherever you go, there you are is one of my personal favorites. And then here's some other opportunities we have for continue learning coming up. So we have a 5-week series on how to start a mindfulness practice. The goal of the 5-week series is to actually form a daily practice. So we'll start with 1 to 3 minutes a day. Over 5 weeks, we'll work up to 10 minutes. Kat says, I love Headspace. Andy is the best. Yeah, I love Headspace too. It's fantastic. It's a good app. Insight Timer is probably my favorite because on Insight Timer, you can set a chime or a bell and practice in silence if you're ready for that. Or you can type in and find thousands of different guided meditations, and you can search by how much time you have and what your desired outcome is. So if you say, I really have physical tension, you can search for a meditation to help with that. So 5-week series, forming a practice. And then we are offering the full John Kabat-Zinn MBSR course starting in June. That's again, 2.5 hours a week. Well, in my class, we meet 2 hours a week. And we ask people to practice 15 to 30 minutes a day. So it's a really good deep dive. I recommend that course for people who really are interested in this topic or who are experiencing pretty intense side effects from chronic stress. So if you say, I really need to make a change, right? My blood pressure is high, I'm getting migraines, whatever it might be, I recommend MBSR. Also really good for patients. So if you are a clinician on the line and you're seeing patients in any fashion, this can be really good. We have a lot of patients from neuro that pop into this class and experience chronic pain. This can be a really good course for those individuals. And now it won't let me hit next. Are the resources 1 day a week or daily? Great question. So 1 day a week. Terry, thank you. So the 5-week class meets virtually 7:30 to 8:30 on, I think April 13th is a Tuesday. And then it's every Tuesday for 5 weeks. And then same with the MBSR, it's whatever June 1st is every day of the week, it's that week, every week. Jason says, I just started using Calm. I like it so far. Also has kid stories. I help to use my 2-year-old go to bed. Yes, fantastic. These techniques are great for kiddos, especially breath techniques. And then if you're a faculty and you're interested in learning more and really leading groups across the campus, there is a mind-body training coming up in November, and you can reach out to Susie McDonald about that. Her email is here on the bottom of the screen. This is a really cool program that Dr. Cotton started with her colleague from Georgetown. And they train faculty on how to lead mind-body medicine groups with students and other faculty. So it's a 3-day meditation retreat and at Murfin Ridge, and I've done it a few times with them, and it's just beautiful. So if you have capacity to do that, I highly recommend. On that note, I left about 6 minutes for questions. What questions do you have? Please use the chat. No questions too small about forming a practice, how you can practice, anything on mindfulness. Let's see, Stephanie's the links in there. Oh, feedback.
Oh yeah, I was just putting our evaluation in, but yes, please, because I know people have to leave before the hour ends. So I just wanted to put our evaluation because our feedback is important because this is a different type of grand rounds that we usually do, and just wanted to put that out there. But yes, please continue the chat, or I'm happy to unmute people. So please talk to Meridan.
Do you share your
Anyone.
slides or no? Terry, we don't share our slides, but it's taped. And also I'll send our handout through Stephanie. Stephanie, can I send it to you? And you can send it to
Yes.
the group. We have a little handout for this session, and it has a summary of what we shared. It has a link to 16 different studies if you're interested in the research. And then it has 2 guided practices, little 3-minute audios of me leading practices that you can use. So I'll share that through Stephanie, Terry. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. It's a great question. And I would just encourage you, I mean, obviously you're interested in this topic, you attended this, which I'm really grateful for. I would encourage you to just try something small. This work is so needed right now on an individual and collective level. Just taking care of our mental fitness, taking care of our mental health the same way we do with our heart and our bodies. So I'm really thankful that you dedicated this hour to investing in yourself. And I would encourage you to find some small way to practice that works for you. And if you're still like, Meridan, I don't know what that is, email me and I will help you find that.
Absolutely. And still welcoming questions. I know we're getting to that hour. We still have about 4 minutes, but I would love to share while you're thinking of your questions or would like me to unmute you. On Tuesday, she just finished an 8-week course that I attended, and I would love to share the mindful meditation that I'm working on, which is may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. So I'm going to put that in the chat.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you. And that's it's called Metta, or loving kindness meditation. And there's a lot of research in the positive psych field around loving kindness and how it can increase happiness, compassion, feelings of connectedness. Yeah, Kathy says my favorite thing to do. Hi, Kathy. Some familiar faces here. Good to see you, Kathy.
Oh yeah, Kathy was there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It was great to be here with this group.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, and I'll
My
take this off.
personal
Yeah.
email here too, and my UC email as well. So anyone can
Oh,
email
yes.
me either one.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you which one do you prefer to put out there? So
It doesn't matter. Adrian, thanks for coming. Thanks, Laurel. Fantastic.
Oh, good. Hi, Angie. Good. I'm so glad that you came to this, Angie.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Much needed.
Thanks,
Oh,
Kat.
yeah, Kat. Thanks for coming too and sharing. Awesome.
Great. Well, I'll stay on for a few minutes, but I think people can hop
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll stop sharing so we can see faces here. And please fill out the feedback form because it allows us to know what type of presentations you're looking for. And so we're just 3 into the new year and we have multiples coming up, and we would love to hear your feedback, especially about this presentation as well. So as we look for different presentations at Children's and at UC, or from, I should say, expertise from Children's, UC, and outside of our health center, academic health center, please continue to share with us what you think is important and should be presented here at Grand Rounds. So thank you so much. You can always email me or Catherine Bowers, and I'll put our emails here in the chat as well. And of course, Thank you to Meridan. What a great way to end the university spring break, which all of us were still here for. So thank you, Meridan.
Yeah.
And really to help us with resiliency in the workplace, which after 2 years of the pandemic, which is still going on, we really, really needed your help with. So thank you so much for being our expertise here. I really, really appreciate you. I have, in these 2 years, with my mother passing, I have really needed something like this, and it really has helped. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That means so much to me. And I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you.